Another thing about how they left, according to what we know from just traditions, is that the women always left first. Some of the commentaries I read said it's because they were slower walkers. I took that with a grain of salt. I said, I don't know about that. Yes, I thought I would have to leave 3 days early, didn't I? And I said, I don't think that's right. But there might be another reason why they left early. Say they left at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. The men didn't leave till noon or 1. First, it gave the men another time to go to the temple. They were the ones required to go. The women weren't required to go. The men had to. So it gave them another time. But ladies, what did it also give the women time to do before the men got there, before the men reached? To cook a meal. And it was a 3-day journey or so. So they'd go part of the way and they'd stop on the trail. There were caravan trails that they knew they were traveling. And then by the time the men got there, the food was ready. I think that's it. I didn't read that in any commentary. I just knew that. Because otherwise the men would be upset. Right? So, there's part of this is that maybe Joseph thinks that Jesus is with Mary. Mary thinks that Jesus is coming with Joseph. They don't hook up till later in the day. And they go, aren't they with you? Isn't he with you? Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? They put 2 and 2 together. They go among all their relatives and all their friends who they think he could be with, and they say, no, we thought he was with you. So they turn around. Did you ever have to turn around and go back somewhere because you forgot something? Whether it was a child or something else? My mother and my sister always had adventures going to Florida, and one of the times, and my sister at the time lived in Washington, D.C., so my mom picked her up on the way, which is a scary thought, isn't it? Then my sister started to drive when my mom got there. And they had driven all day, and they'd stop for gas, and my sister put gas in the car because it was my mom's car, and I'll pay for the gas. And they got to dinner, 5 o'clock. They left at 8 in the morning. They were down in Georgia somewhere, or the Carolinas, and my mom said, I'll get dinner. And she went and she couldn't find her purse. And she said, you know, I bet it's at that Cracker Barrel back in Maryland, where I bought breakfast. And my sister said, are you kidding me? All my credit cards are in it. My keys to the trailer are in it. Everything we need in it. You know what they had to do? Turn around and go all the way back to Maryland. It took them 2 extra days on their trip. Whenever my mom and my sister went to Florida, there was always a story. And that was one of the good ones. Mary and Joseph go back. Not sure where they're going to find him. Finally, they go to the temple. To that huge place dedicated to the Lord that had the Holy of Holies, and then the courtyards with all of the offering places and the sacrificial places and the places to ritually cleanse yourself. A huge area. In the pictures you see of Jerusalem today, that area is all still there. Called the Temple Mount. Although now there's a Muslim mosque there instead of the Holy of Holies, but the rest of it looks quite a bit the same, except for some of the walls and things. They go and they find Jesus in that temple area. And Mary goes up to him. And she doesn't say, oh, thank goodness we found you. She's like any mother. Where have you been? Didn't you know we were looking for you? And Jesus said, why think I was the one that was lost. You were lost. I knew where I was. Why were you seeking me? Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? Or as the Revised Standard Version says, didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? I think you could combine them. Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house about his business, doing his work? He had been there listening. We always think that there's pictures of him like he's teaching all the time. And he must have done some, because it says that the people were astonished at his answers. But he was asking questions and answering questions. Asking, answering, listening. Isn't love really all about listening? Isn't it? Some of us aren't very good listeners sometimes, and we need to kick it up a notch, because love is all about listening. And Jesus has been listening to the teachers, to the not only the scribes and the Pharisees, who someday he's going to have contests with, but with also some of the really great and wonderful people, the teachers of the law. And he's listening to them. And he says he's also answering questions. Mary says, didn't you know that your father and I were looking for you? And Jesus said, I was in my Father's house. Took the word father, meaning Joseph, and made it into something meaning something far greater, meaning God. It's the first time in the Bible that father is used for God. And it's given by Jesus. Isn't that wonderful? And the word that's used in the Hebrew was Abba. Abba. And it means daddy. Or dad. We translate it father. It means papa. Daddy. It's about a relationship that's the closest it can be between a young child and his dad. And Jesus says, I'm in my dad's house. And I'm about my dad's business. I don't know how Joseph took that. But they knew that he'd been set apart for something special, didn't they? And apparently, for Luke, who got this story from Mary, Mary told him this story and said this was a significant time because it may have been the first time that Jesus began to really show who he was and what his purpose was on this earth. I often wonder, when did Jesus know he was God's son? When he was 2? When he was 5? We don't know exactly. But this little glimpse, this picture of Jesus at 12 shows that by then he knows who he is. And he knows that he has a purpose. Don't you know that I am about my Father's business? Don't you know that I need to be in my Father's